Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Well, spring is finally here. This week is the official start of spring, and oh man, thank goodness. I know if you're anything like me, spring is always such a delightful time of year because we're finally moving into this newness. We get back outside, we get to experience the green and the flowers and the beauty of new beginnings, and it's such a brilliant illustration of God's creation and His design. And so it is a great time for us to do similar things in our faithful stewardship. And so I want to encourage you to use this opportunity, this new energy, as you shake off the dust of winter, you kind of get back out into the moving activity of spring. This is a great opportunity for us to make sure that we are also shaking off the bad habits or the decisions that we've made, or paying attention to what happened in the first quarter and preparing for what needs to happen for the rest of the year. You know, we talk about the cadence of these check-ins that we need, kind of monthly reviews, quarterly, deeper dives, semi-annually, annually. We want to be looking at our overall financial stewardship, our general stewardship of our time, of all of our resources, on a cadence that gives us just a touch point where we can start to make changes if we need to. And that is really important as we go through the calendar year, but I would argue this is probably one of the most important ones, because we're still close enough to when we set out into the year and we said these are the things we're going to do differently, to hold ourselves accountable because there's still time to do them. If we said we were going to start saving into our 401k, but we never made that change on our paycheck, do it. If we said we were going to start giving more generously, but we never automated any of those gifts, or we never set up anything to start really making that discipline happen for our family, do it. This is where we're close enough where we remember what we said we would do, and now we have the opportunity to still make sure it happens. If we wait too long into the year, we very easily slip into this, I'll do it next year, I'll get around to it eventually. This is the quarter where if it didn't happen in the first quarter, we make sure it happens now. And so I want to encourage you and have you encourage others that you might be leading, that we want to check in with our family. If we did an annual review like we talked about in a podcast a while ago, and we checked in when we looked back over 2024 and we made decisions for 2025, this is a great opportunity to have another family meeting and just see, are we doing those things? Are we on track? How are we doing on paying attention to our resources? Are we actually tracking and categorizing our spending? You can still catch up on that if you haven't been. You can still put yourself in a position to understand more fully how this is all going and where these resources are heading if you catch up over the last 90 days and get yourself to a place where you're set up for the rest of the year to be automated. You can go back and listen to the way that we talked about different software options a few podcasts ago. Get back in there and pick one and start using it and get into this rhythm of having that be part of your weekly experience where you're categorizing and organizing. If you have been tracking things well, you should have a pretty good handle then on whether you're starting off on the trajectory you hoped for. If you're seeing your spending constantly tracking ahead of what you said you would spend, this is a great time to seek understanding there. What was wrong about that? Did we just not understand the reality and this really is the number we will be spending and we need to adjust our spending plan accordingly? Or did we get emotionally connected to things or get out over our skis because we were being reactionary and emotional in our spending? If that's the case, what do we need to do to get that under control? To start to be more thoughtful, more proactive, to be planning out how we're going to approach this ahead of time and then following through on what we said we would do. A lot of times in that first quarter, we're still digging out. So if you way overspent for the holiday season, have you caught up? Have you gotten back into a rhythm and a predictable pattern of how you're spending? If not, where can you cut back in order to give yourself more margin so that you can breathe easier? We want to set ourselves up to be banking that margin, being ready so that when we get to next Christmas, which I know is crazy to talk about right now, but we don't put ourselves in a position where the first quarter of 26 is spent playing catch up. Let's prepare for that ahead of time. Let's get to a place where we've got more space, more wiggle room. And that may mean denying ourselves, saying no to things, but it's worth it. And if we start doing that now, we still have many, many months of that consistent behavior that prepares us for a stronger position come the holiday season for 25. This is also a really good time for us to double check on our non-negotiables. What are the things we said we were going to pick up? Did we do that? If you said, for example, as a family, we're going to pick up some shared adventure, we're going to book some really great trips, we're going to do some really cool things together. Have you done those things? Have you booked those things? Have you done what you need to do in order to get them on the calendar and get them ready to go? Because the time is going to click away and you're going to find yourself in summer sooner than you think, and we'll be wishing we had booked things now. So if you haven't started to put some of those non-negotiables in place, we need to make sure we're taking action to get them where they need to be mapped out throughout the year, and also making sure we're in a position where all of those things are affordable. If we picked up some things and we booked all that stuff, but now we're behind, we've overspent in other areas, we've put ourselves in a bind, do we need to think about canceling things? Do we need to unwind some stuff? Are there things we actually do need to put down because we overspent and we aren't going to be prepared for those things that we hoped we would get to do this year? This is a great time to face that unfortunate reality and make those decisions when they're not as painful. If we're canceling something that's 8 months away or 6 months away, it's easier to absorb that shock now than to push that off until we get to where we're really close and we're ready to pack, and then we have to cut it off. That is so much more painful when we're close and we're anticipating it than when it's far enough away that we don't even feel like we missed it. And so this is a really important check-in, both for our ability to get caught up on the things we're behind on and also to make changes for what's ahead in order to make sure that we are making progress in our faithful stewardship. This may also be a season where you've gotten a tax refund potentially. And what I want to do really quickly is address that whole idea of a tax refund. A lot of times we will use those tax refunds to bail us out of behaviors that we actually need to stop doing. So if we have been overspending on certain items, or we, buy a car because we know we're getting a tax refund and it's going to bail us out, or we spend extra on a vacation because we know we're going to get a tax refund, those are all things where we are spending money in advance of having it in the hope that that refund is what frees us back up and gives us back our margin. We don't want to be spending margin ahead of time. We want to make sure that we're being thoughtful and intentional. We also don't want to be getting big tax refunds. Guys, if you are getting large refunds, it means you are sending the government more money every month than you need to in your paycheck, which means you are living a much tighter lifestyle between now and when you get your refund next year. A lot of times people think of refunds as forced savings. That is a terrible way to think about it, because you have no access to those dollars between now and then. And so a lot of times we'll see people digging holes, getting in trouble, building up credit card debt, and then their refund bails them out to fill those holes back in. And then they keep digging and they do it all over again. And so every year that refund becomes this saving grace that comes in to rescue you from the holes that you dug. But if you approach this in a disciplined way, if you pay attention to the decisions that you're making and you withhold less in taxes, you will get more cash flow between now and then, and you can save that intentionally as a faithful steward to be prepared for future obedience. You can put yourself in a stronger position if you just build into your cash flow a structured spending plan that leads to those dollars being captured and set aside. Now you end up with so much more flexibility and so much more confidence, and you're not digging a hole that you then have to fill back in with your refund. We need to think differently about refunds. Large tax refunds are not something to celebrate. They're an indication that something is off, that you've got something set up incorrectly and it needs to be corrected in order for your cash flow to be right-sized throughout the year. This is a great time to make adjustments on those withholdings because you would have just gotten your refund and you know that something's weird. If nothing changed in your income going into 25, but in 24 you got a massive refund, then you should be adjusting your tax withholdings right now so that you don't end up in the same situation next year. We've got to stop that cycle of sending all this money away where we can't touch it and we can't get to it, and then getting a giant check back and thinking somehow that we did something right. That actually is an indication that we're not doing it right. Let's talk about debt reduction. If you acquired a bunch of debt in the holiday season and you've been focused on paying that down, how are you doing? Where does that stand? If this is part of your net worth goal of reducing overall debt for the year, are you doing that? Are you seeing progress in those balances? And we want to make sure we're paying those off in a way that grabs cash flow back. We want to pay off the smallest balance to get those payments back so we can reallocate it to the next payment, to the next payment. We want to keep recovering cash flow that we've been sending out. And so if you've been doing it a different way and you're still having lots of payments going out, we want to reorient our thinking and make sure we're addressing these smaller balances and getting them wiped out so that we can start hitting those bigger balances with bigger payments. We should be focused this year on debt reduction, particularly inefficient debt, credit card debt being the most important one to eliminate. We need to get those high interest debt payments under control and get those balances eliminated so that we are efficient in the way that we're handling God's resources. We don't think debt is evil at Good Sense. We don't believe that that's the way we want to think about it, but we do see it as destructive. We do see credit card debt in particular as being really inefficient uses of debt. And so we don't want to be addicted to it. We don't want to be stuck using it over and over and over again. We really want to get to a place where we have that under control and we pay off the balance every month and we never borrow month to month. We just want to use it as a transaction tool, not as a financing tool. And so this is such a great season to check in on that stuff because you should be seeing some progress by now, a few months in. And if you're not, or if you're seeing it growing in balance, then there's a really big indicator that we're spending beyond our means and it's getting worse. And we better get some things under control. We better get our act together and pay attention because we're going to set ourselves up to make the opposite happen over the course of the year. Our net worth would actually go down as we continue to accumulate more debt. And so we really want to make sure we're paying attention to that. We don't want to hate debt to the point where we are over prioritizing paying debt off as our only goal. We need to balance debt payments and saving for the future. Those are both growing our net worth, and we need to be doing both simultaneously, not one or the other. And so make sure you're mapping that out and make sure you're checking in this quarter to see if those things are both happening. If you're over focused on one or the other, this is a great time to kind of balance that out and level set and make sure you're not in a place where you're only doing one of those things. You're only paying debt down, but you're not getting your 401k match, or you're not saving for other things that are important to you because you're so focused on debt reduction. At the same time, we don't want to be so focused on accumulating resources and 401ks and things like that, and we're not paying any of our debt down. And so we have savings accounts that are making 3% interest, but we have credit card debt that's accumulating 20% interest. That's deeply ineffective. And so we've got to make sure we're balancing these things. And all of those things being balanced puts us in a place where we face the next several months of this year with more confidence, more clarity, that this is how we're making progress, and we can see that progress happening, which fuels more and more encouragement to keep going. If you're 3 months in and none of this has happened, and you're not even really seeing any progress, you're going to have a hard time continuing to do the disciplines that lead to progress. And so by checking in, we're showing ourselves, no, we are actually making progress. Keep going. Keep going. As a family, we start to get more confidence that this is working if we're looking at it and we're paying attention to it. As the spring is upon us and we are in this season of new life, I want to encourage us to give new life to our faithful stewardship in our families and in the families that we lead. Use this energy of the new to make new decisions, to put new disciplines in place, to encourage your family to say yes to the things that matter and put down the things that don't. Use all of that newness to lead to a new experience in your walk with Jesus and your stewardship of his resources. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you.